I'm here with Gretchen Kiefner from Bullhorn, and our topic today, this is part 2 of our series, Keep Calm. In this case, we're talking about how to authentically connect and find new ways to serve and delight your customers. We had started our conversation in a much different business environment back in February about the digitization and how automation is here. I think we're now living in that reality, and we all need to get creative about how we get to our customers. And so I'm so happy today to talk about this. I think Gretchen has some great things to share. And our goal here is to have you leave this conversation with an ability to put this to work right away at the end and get in rooms that virtually, albeit, but rooms that you might not have been able to get into before and delight your customers. Gretchen, welcome. How are you? How are things going?
Thank you. I'm good. Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited by our ability to talk today and some of these new tools. So why don't I just turn it to you, and why don't you set the context, and let's think about why are we talking about this? I think you and I are passionate about new tools, new ways of connecting. It's something that we had taken on before. But now, how do you see the ability to use these tools playing out in today's business climate?
Yes, perfect. I'm looking forward to discussing it too. And the reason we're here talking about this today is because it is more important now than ever, and for a few reasons, and maybe a reason or two that you're not thinking of today. And I shared with you that I wanted to open with a stat. I recently read that Americans' average workday has increased in duration by 40%, or 3 hours a day. And if you think about that, day after day after day, week after week, that's a lot more work. And it's several things. A lot of people without a commute are putting in more hours into their jobs where they're employed. But that also includes the work we're doing at home. It could be childcare where you weren't providing that on an full day basis before you're working to educate them at home. So overall, people are working a lot more. And when we think about the way that we're working, and specifically related to business, and when we're doing our, quote unquote day jobs or 24/7, hour jobs these days, we're doing it via technology. And I also read a really interesting article recently too that talks about the difference in communication and trying to connect with other human beings over either phone or video call versus being in person. There are just pieces of human communication, so many nonverbal cues that we're not able to pick up on and process when we're on a Zoom meeting with somebody, and it makes it that much harder to connect. And all in all, it's just a bit exhausting. So how does this relate to, connecting with our customers and continuing to make business move along and really building value during this time? It's recognizing that yourself and your customers are coming into these meetings from that place. They're coming into the next Zoom meeting with you from probably 5 Zoom meetings prior. Maybe they got a bathroom break. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they had to go, take care of something really quick with their kids. And so how do we create spaces in these meetings and leading up to meetings that make it meaningful, that create value, and that really are fun, not only for our customers and our teams, but also for ourselves. And I think on the bright side, and I know we had talked about this before, people are more available than ever. With it being said that we're working so many hours, our schedules do have more flexibility because we're not traveling. There are no more, geographical barriers. So more of the right people can be in a room. I think we've kind of overdone it a bit and probably have more meetings on our calendars than we need to. But I know for myself and my team, we're finding that we're able to connect with C-levels and with other stakeholders in our customer base and in our prospect base than we ever have before. Tracy, are you seeing that too?
You know, Gretchen, I am for sure seeing, I was just taking notes as you were talking. I definitely feel that the 40%, I feel that, you know, in terms of my workday. In fact, I would say that that stat is low.
Yes.
I have an experience, particularly those of us that work in global time zones, that my job never ends. It is 24/7. And I do feel this overwhelm of just trying to keep up with things. So I definitely see that. I also see that it is easier to get the right people into a room to have meaningful conversations. For example, yesterday I had a prospecting call where a CEO came and he brought his entire talent acquisition team with him to the call, and we made decisions in real time about what we were taking on from a business problem, decisions to make immediately in terms of who was going to do what on his team, how they were going to evaluate us as a potential partner. And I found it so refreshing and actually somewhat typical of how decisions are being made. So I definitely echo what you're talking about. What I'd like to say, and we started our conversation kind of jumping right into it, is there's lots of people joining, and we are not able to look at the attendees across, you know, virtually with our Zoom video. And the reason we started with the conversation is there's also this thing called what I call tool fatigue or tool snag, right? That comes in where Gretchen and I are we're super prepared. We did a test drive, and then we get on 15 minutes in advance and our video's not working. So I think that's also part of it, is how do you include, so I'm saying that purposefully to all of the attendees coming in, you're not looking at us, not because we didn't practice, not because we didn't have good intentions, but we want to help you. This is real life, people. So more work, you know, 40% more work. The tools don't always work the way they're supposed to. We have to show value, create value, have fun, and we have the right people in the room. So there's a lot of pressure to get it right. So in that, Gretchen, I know you have some great things to share in terms of how to do that.
Yes, perfect. I think that's a great transition. And I also want to state that, right? First of all, there's a lot of unknown. You know, when are people going back into the office? Will they ever go back into the office? I know I saw that Twitter announced yesterday that they are allowing their employees to permanently work from home, even when they plan to open their office, which at this point isn't even until September. You know, I saw an article last week that big companies like Career Builder are looking to sell off their big office headquarters space. I mean, A, you know, companies need that cash right now. B, they're finding a lot of benefits in it. So it's not something that's just today and we're going to get back to, you know, what we consider normal. This is something that we all need to adjust to in some way, you know, for the long term. So what are some of the tools that we can use to make meetings more engaging, to attract people to meetings in a more meaningful way? And one of the first pieces that I wanted to raise, ironically, as Tracy just described, we weren't able to get on video today, but it's really getting comfortable with whatever it is that you.
Hey, Gretchen, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I think you're, could you repeat what you're saying?
Yes, definitely. Oh, I didn't get any signal there. Tracy, I was just saying that one of the first things that I recommend everybody do, which I said was a bit ironic because we're not on video today, but it's to leverage, you know, leverage your online meeting platform, really understand all of the things that it can offer to you. So whether it's Zoom or Teams or Skype, and think about what you would normally have in a live meeting. If you were with your team or if you were with customers, what are some of those things? I know for myself and for Bullhorn and lots of other companies, a big piece of that, is the swag that we bring with us, even to internal meetings. Whether that's, pens or notebooks or t-shirts you might have or things you may wear, and leveraging your background. I've seen it on Zoom. I know it exists in other online meeting platforms as well. That is a really great way that you can, build in an element of surprise or brand to the meeting. And now we have bullhorn backgrounds that we use, but what's even cooler is if you get in a meeting with a customer or a prospect and you've created a background that represents their office space or their logo or something that is special to them. So again, I would love to show you that right now, and I can send some examples afterwards, but it is very easy to create and add in virtual backgrounds in lots of these different online meeting platforms. So think about how you can incorporate that. The other thing that I recommend incorporating, I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment here, are other things you would use in a live meeting, like a whiteboard. Hopefully everyone is seeing my screen. Now on Zoom, this is really easy. You just click share and then you're sharing the whiteboard and you can real-time collaborate with your customers. So with you all, maybe I would want to say, draw this and we say top ways to engage customers virtually. And then I'm not good at drawing with a mouse at all, but it takes a lot of practice and you can do that in lots of meaningful ways. That's a way I know that in our live meetings with customers, we really come out with a deliverable. We're mapping out their processes or we're mapping out their tech stack. And just because you're not together in a room with an actual whiteboard to do that, you can still find ways to do that virtually here. So I wanted to share that with the group as one of the primary ways to connect with customers in a way that we normally would if we were in person. A few other things.
So Gretchen, before you go on, because that was so good. So let me ask a couple questions about that. So one is that I'm just thinking about the conversations about engaging the right, C-level and decision makers. So that's probably not necessarily a prospecting tool you would use, but that's kind of a little bit farther down after you've had some engagement with the stakeholders, right? You would advocate using the tool that way?
I would. I think maybe there's a way you use that in a first meeting, but yes, we generally use that in meetings with our customers. I am going to talk about a few ways to connect with prospects as well. That's a great thing.
Yep, that's great. And then the other thing is that a standard feature? And I'm asking maybe some obvious questions that you and I may know, but is that like a standard feature that is available on Zoom, or is that something that you have to pay for enhancements? As part of what has happened with some of the people that I've been talking to is just the Zoom sort of universe, making sure you're aware of all the different updates that they're offering. So is that standard that you get with Zoom?
That is standard, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to show that, Tracy, because it's standard and it's super, super easy to use.
Yeah, that's great. All right.
Yes. Good. A couple other things, while I'm talking through what would you do in a real life meeting that you can replicate in this virtual world, generally we bring food, right? We have breakfast delivered or lunch delivered, or we take, customers or a prospect that we're meeting for the first time out to a happy hour. Well, we obviously can't do that right now, but if you think ahead of a meeting, or this could be in the right way, something that you do with a prospect, send them an online gift card that they can use for breakfast and lunch and make it really easy. Make sure obviously you're using gift cards to places that have curbside pickup or delivery or drive-through open at this time. And something we did for a recent meeting with a customer was share a gift card with them to a place that is local to them. So if you know that most of the team or the group that you are meeting with, is in one location, do it locally, because we all know that there's a big push to support local businesses right now. So that's a nice, extra special touch.
Right, and one thing to add to that, and this is probably more from the point of view of existing customers. So what I would say engagements that are in flight is, and we all know this, that there's typical places, and one of my teammates who's on this call with me, Maria, will know when we were doing business with a company in Baltimore, there were these places that they always went for lunch. And so whenever you were entertaining or doing any type of engagement with them, there were the 3 places that you went to for lunch with them, so you knew that. So one of the things that I did recently is I talked exactly what you're saying, a local business of one of those 3, for example, and then ordered lunch for the different, and again, it wasn't a huge meeting. It's a little bit harder to do if you've got like a big team, but it was just a handful of people, and ordered locally from their favorite places and had them come at sort of the same, within the same window within the meeting. And so that is huge kudos, not only the gift card, but that was like, wow. Now it takes coordination, but it, again, the replication of what I think people, especially like 8 weeks into shelter in place, people are really missing those things that we used to take for granted that we were able to do just, at any moment. So that's just another kind of way to think about it.
Yes, that's a great example. Thank you, Tracy. And another thing that can be a wow factor and a really nice surprise is, and we all love this when we get it, a gift in the mail. We will often bring goodies or send a gift to, again, a customer or a prospect. It could be something, corporate branded that ties into a message that you're trying to communicate to a prospect. There's all sorts of things you can do with this. But we have used, there are lots of resources again, but we have used Giftagram really successfully at Bullhorn. And the really nice thing about this is you don't have to know your prospect or your customer's home address to use this. There's a program that you can set up where you send a link to your customer or prospect, and they get to put in their own information to have whatever it is that you have queued up delivered to them. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from this. And again, you can use this in several ways. We actually, to get really specific, have been sending out this really nice trio of succulents because we know everybody is trying to make their home office space really nice right now. And it's something that's, easy to take care of. That can bring a little smile or joy to a customer or prospect's face. So check that out. There are a lot of really great options. Giftagram is just one that I like here. The other fun kind of wow factor thing that I wanted to share, and Kahoot, again, is another example of something that I've personally used successfully. I know there are other tools that work similarly, but if you're in a meeting, then how do you make sure that people aren't checking their phone, looking at their other email, whatever it is they've got going on? I mean, we know that that's part of the problem with webinars and other things is that people become easily distracted. But if you can make it competitive and fun and actually require the participant on the other end to do something, then that's a great value too. So Kahoot is essentially like a gaming or quiz platform. And again, Tracy, you asked this up front, is it basic? Is it standard? What I'm showing you here is totally free. It is the basic personal option. Of course, you can upgrade and you can brand this with your corporate logo or with your customer or prospects logo, etc. But this is something that is easy and free to use. And I'm just showing you, I went in and I clicked create and I typed in this color and these answers. It took me literally 2 minutes to do. Obviously, what is my favorite color is probably not a question I'm going to ask in a business scenario, but I just thought I would keep it, simple for this case. And what happens is, I'll show you in the preview, you get a code that you share with all your participants in the meeting. Oop, I'm going to turn off the noise here. So you get this numerical code, you share this out with the participants in the meeting, then you would, put it over here because they're going to download the Kahoot app, which again takes literally 1 minute to do. And then you type in your name if you're a participant, go, and then you play the game. Again, I'm using the family and friends edition. There's corporate edition as well. The question is, what is my favorite color? Here are my choices. And you click over here on the right. You can choose the music so there's not a loud cymbal banging also, but super simple. And then the fun thing is you can make it competitive. So you see if you're at the top of the platform here, and you can offer prizes along with it too. We have used this a few different ways. We've used this with customers and input, industry statistics as questions, or if they're a long-term customer, things about the relationship with Bullhorn as questions, or if you even want to do it with a prospect, it could be something around product or key facts you've learned about their business. So you can use this in lots of different ways. I also want to say it's a great tool to use internally with your teams. I'm not sure if all of you on the call have done, virtual happy hours with your team. Sending something ahead of time, which I've mentioned a few times now, goes a long way. We sent out mugs and pint glasses to all of our team out ahead of a virtual happy hour that we were going to have with our team branding on it. And then during the happy hour, we ran a quiz. It was like fun facts about all the team members on your team. And it went over really well. In fact, the team continues to ask to do that, in other ways over and over again. So something really fun and cool. Tracy, have you ever used a gaming or quiz tool like this?
We have, yes. I've not used Kahoot, but I've definitely, I think they're pretty standard kind of fun tools that people use, like particularly in like big networking meetings. Like I was at one right before shelter in place started, and it was a big group of HR folks, and it was the same exact thing where they were putting up all these stats about maybe some of Bullhorn stats, actually, now that I think about it, about recruiting and trends in talent. And people love this because of there was a prize at the end, and everybody loved the gamification and the prize. So
yes,
it's so much fun, right? To kind of think about moving that virtually.
Exactly. It is. And you can use it in big sessions too. And for me, one of the best ways that we have specifically connected with prospects in this time is by sponsoring networking sessions. And you obviously need a really compelling topic or a question that you're working to answer to get people online or in another online meeting with their peers to discuss, but it has worked really well. I mean, I think we've probably done, over our global team, we've probably done 25 or so over the last 3 weeks, but on very different topics. And in fact, we're doing one tomorrow with a group of CIOs, really to have a similar conversation that we're having here. What tools are they investing in? How do they both short and long-term plan, to support their remote workforces? And I would also offer up, I had a bit of hesitation doing that because a lot of organizations and groups and people are writing about or talking about these things right now. I thought, what can we offer that's different? The reality is what's different is the group you put together to talk about it. Because in these situations, as the host, you are the conversation facilitator. You're generally not presenting. Maybe you start with some data, which I always recommend. I think that's one of the best things we can all do right now is share the information that we have. So to frame it with some data and then have a few key questions lined up and get the discussion going. And like in any good roundtable or panel, you want to kind of know who can answer or ask key questions, have your people kind of picked out ahead of time. And then you can have a really great, robust conversation, virtually. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow. I know we're going to continue to do that more and more. So think about, what roles would make sense to bring together, like I mentioned, CIOs or industries you can bring together. Is it a segment of an industry? We've also done it for companies. So we'll have multiple stakeholders in one company to talk about how to boost, employee morale and how staffing firms or talent acquisition teams can best, interact with candidates during this time. So it doesn't have to be multiple companies either. That's something cool that we can sponsor for prospect organizations as well, to say, we have this data, we have some unique information because of who we work with in the market, and we'd love to share that with you, right? No strings attached. We want to share this information and understand, what you're seeing in your business, and work through to see if there's anything else we can do to help. So that's really a big one, especially when we're thinking about how to attract prospects during this time.
Right, so let me unpack that one a little bit more for the people on the call, because we too at Growth Play have been doing the same thing, and we've been doing it by either what I say, the problems that people are solving for. So when you're talking about boosting employee morale, that would be a great conversation. Or around, to your point, what do CIOs care about right now? Or what do private equity executives care about? And so how do you go about getting that sponsorship? I think if without, and again, I don't want you to betray any, trade secrets of Bullhorn, but if there's anything, tips about how you go about doing this from the nuts and bolts, I think that would be a really great takeaway, because I'm sure there's lots of people who want to know how you would go from, boosting employee morale as a topic to getting, CIOs in the room to answer that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first, I would do a brainstorm session with the right people at your organization. I mean, for us, we're generally including marketing, product marketing, sales, sometimes, technology if it's going to be pretty IT focused, but getting all of those folks in a room and starting, you can use the virtual whiteboard in this situation, but starting to brainstorm, what groups of people do we want to target? Who is dealing with what problems right now, Tracy, to your point? And I think that flows into larger strategy as well. I was on a virtual kind of brainstorm call. This is another cool thing I'm seeing organizations do. And I'm a part of Sales Assembly here in Chicago, and every Thursday they host essentially a coffee meeting for, all VPs or heads of sales in technology companies in Chicago. And it's super open forum. There is no set topic, but people bring problems to this call. And we were actually talking through this exactly. Someone said their pipeline is just getting totally stale, and they're sick of having the same forecast conversation over and over and over again with their board. Like every week, it's like, well, it's the same companies. And so we talked about how you can use that time, with the board or in your forecasting, or carve out separate time to really look at how you're targeting the industries that are really growing right now. What are you doing, in certain areas of healthcare? What are you doing, if you have customers in the logistics segment or in online retail, or many areas that we're seeing a heavy amount of growth right now? Are you putting additional effort in your targeting strategy in those areas, or even in your product development strategy? So we all need to be thinking through that, both short and long term. How do you make adjustments so you're actually targeting areas of growth? So back to your question, Tracy, when you're really thinking through how do you go execute on a networking session like this, you obviously want it to be high return for you. So first step would be to narrow down, what does that look like? What stakeholders is that? What industries do I want to be focusing on right now because they're growing, or where is the major area of pain? Once you have that, then think about your organization and the value that you offer to that specific segment or industry. What data, what topics do you have special expertise on that you can provide, or at least, facilitate the conversation, like I said. And then from there, build your target list. And we've sent, a few emails was the primary way that we did this. We also have a few, key customer champions or prospects that we are connected with that we ask to help spread the word as well, because everybody is a part of another circle. And I know, for instance, I'll just keep using the CIO example. Group that we're talking to tomorrow, they are each in several, other groups of CIOs within the industry. So it's, hey, we're doing this, whoever the CIO is that I'm talking to, do you mind letting, the groups that you're involved in know about this, while also running, email campaigns or however it is that you generally market for these types of things. Another best practice for a roundtable like this, keep the list short, right? Don't have a huge long list. Like right now we're doing this in webinar style. For what I'm describing, you want to be able to have interaction and discussion amongst all of the participants. So we limit participation at 12, and that's a way that you can drive demand around this too, right? So first come, first serve for this great topic. And, sometimes we'll even share, here are some of the companies that have already, or people that have already committed, to drive further engagement. I'm thinking through some other logistics. Keep the content short too, as I said, have some data up front and some key questions ready to go. And one thing that we've done, and we did before this networking session we're doing tomorrow, is survey the attendees ahead of time and ask them, what are the big things that you really want to cover under this topic umbrella? So that they're coming to the call ready to discuss these things.
No, I knew I really wanted you to go through those tactics because I think that they're fantastic. It's similar to some of the tactics that we have used as well. And I think that there's tremendous value in what you're talking about. Is there any particular survey platform that you use that you prefer?
We generally use Surveymonkey. Again, you get a lot with the basic package. Also, Google Forms. If you're a Google shop, that's super easy to use. It's easy to put in what you want to ask and then get responses back. Yep.
So then one question that I'm seeing that came in that I think is really interesting is, and I think you talked about it in the opening part, is around the number of Zoom calls people are on. So any suggestions about Zoom fatigue? I heard a best practice here that I think is fantastic, which is limit your participation. Make it sort of a, hey,
yes.
Sneak peek, only the, here's you got to hurry, act now kind of thing, which I think again appeals to people's, the FOMO, I don't want to miss out. But what about just Zoom fatigue, particularly I think at the executive level, at the C-suite level? Any thoughts about that?
So I think internally, and you can certainly do this with customers and prospects too, offer up the opportunity not to be on Zoom or at least, decide ahead of time if you want to be on video or not. And I think a easy, safe way to approach it is just, I bet you're on Zoom calls and on video all day, just like I am. Do you want to take a break? Should we just do this over the phone? Or do you just want to get on the conference call and not have to be on video? People really appreciate that right now. I know that one of my leaders asked me that the other day, and I was just so relieved, and you still have the meeting and you still talk, but there's just something about not having, to be on video. Again, I think this is funny since we're not on video today. In this case, I wish we were on video.
Right. Our intention was to be on video this time, so.
That's right. But it's definitely okay to take a break and, to have that conversation up front, I think is greatly appreciated.
Yeah. So another thing that I think you and I talked about in preparation, so one of the values that Growth Play has, we have this perspective, which is called being audible ready, okay? And so I'm going to talk about what that means for those people on the call who have not heard us talk about this. And then, we can hear, if there's some questions about this. But being audible ready means that you do preparation, which Gretchen and I did. We went through our content. We talked about how we were going to show different aspects of the video with Zoom, et cetera. We talked about all the things. And then we logged on 15 minutes in advance because we're good preparing people. And voila, we can't get on video. So then Gretchen and I, because we are both Audible ready, said, no problem, we're just going to go with this. So I think that one of the things as a best practice that, and I know you have a lot of opinion about this too, Gretchen, is the ability for you, if you're someone who is appealing to prospects, who's appealing to customers, you have to be able to be really okay with whatever is going on around you now and be Audible ready. Like right now, you probably hear my dog barking in the background. There's no, these are all like the new normal. So how do you prepare as a coaching manager? How have you prepared your team to be Audible ready in this new normal?
That's a great question. I think that a big part of it is having the conversation, talking through what you just said, Tracy, and that this is the new normal. Things aren't always going to be right. You just have to be comfortable and go with it. The reality is it's the same for all of us when we're talking about coming to calls or on meetings or prep or whatever it may be. And it's interesting, you see, in fact, this morning this happened, I was on with one of our C-levels and his kid came into the background in the video. And there's a part of that breaks down barriers and actually makes us all seem a little more real. And
Yes.
Everyone has developed, I should say, a higher tolerance for those things and lower expectations for perfection with all of this. I think that's real. So helping your teams understand that and lowering their level of anxiety around having to be perfect with every call meeting that they do, understanding again that they've got so much going on outside of work too, due to what we're all experiencing right now, goes a long way.
Right. And there's just a level of overwhelm. I mean, I myself am, feeling it just with all the different things I have to manage. And then there's just all the stress around trying to schedule just, normal things to get done, whether it's grocery shopping or, your doctor's appointments, your child's school, all of that.
That's
and
right.
So I was thinking of this beautiful Mary Oliver poem about you do not have to be good, which is exactly what you're talking about lowering your standards of perfection. And there's a very delicate balance between unprofessional and, we're not saying that, as you listen to it, don't hear that. What we're simply saying is that we're all doing the best we can. The new normal is people's dogs are barking, people's children come in when you're on a call. And there's a new level of, I think this could be the positive aspect of all of this, a new level of where we could really be seeing each other wholly in new ways that we haven't in the past. And I think people are embracing it. I think this is one of the best things about this particular situation, that we're seeing each other anew. So don't worry if things aren't as perfect. But I do think it's important that you address it with your team, because otherwise I think people are really even more stressed about it. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. The most important thing you can do, and that we do need to do, is to lean in. To your point, to all of our points, if it's not perfect, that's okay. But how do you lean in? And we talked about prospects, but especially on the customer side, what else can you do to serve your customers right now? How can you help them optimize what they have already invested in with you for this time? If you are looking to expand with your customers, what are the products that really are relevant for what they're experiencing right now? Like for Bullhorn, we have a whole suite of tools that our customers use. And right now with most of our customers, like if you look at our whole pipeline, almost all of it is focused on automation tools, right? Because most of our customers have had to cut headcount. So how do they do more with less? If you have an answer to that, you've got to be sharing that with your customers. But how can you make them feel really good and make sure that you are top of mind, so when they're ready to buy or expand, whether that's now or later, they feel great about the extra care that you took, the extra delight that you provided, and they understand the value you offer. So we start seeing, these pipelines that are kind of sitting there right now, accelerate and come to fruition. And one thing that I wanted to make sure that I shared on the call today is what we're seeing in our data, because I've mentioned data a few times. And Bullhorn works with the staffing industry. And in fact, we work with about 80% of the largest customers in the staffing industry. They use our platform to post their jobs, to manage their candidates, to work with their clients. So we see what's happening from a talent management standpoint all across the globe. And so we've been very closely and carefully tracking, what are the trends we're seeing: candidates placed, submissions, new job orders opened. And obviously from March really through the middle of April, we saw a continuous and staggering and a bit scary downward trend. However, rest of world outside of North America, we are beginning to see an uptick in the line. And in North America, it's beginning to flatten out, meaning we're not seeing the week over week decreases that we were seeing. So I wanted to share that because we feel really encouraged by it, and we don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't mean that, more dips cannot occur, but it's hopeful. And if you have data like that, I'm sure you are looking at it. If not, find a partner who has that so you can continue to keep your teams and your organizations informed about what we think is ahead and be super prepared for that.
Now, when you and I were preparing and you shared that data, I was so hopeful. I immediately went back to my team and talked about it because, again, it doesn't mean that, the trend is reversing necessarily, but
Right.
It's definitely, I do think that there's, with the unemployment situation, I do think that there's some, what I'd say, the noise in the data, and what we're looking for is the signal, like where can we take this from here?
Yes.
So that's really hopeful to see what you're seeing, because I think, again, you're talking to 80%, right, of the largest customers out there. So I think that's a pretty good anecdotal, story to tell.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, I'm going to check in and see. I don't think there's any other questions that I'm seeing right now. I think we've addressed what people put in the chat function. I just encourage you, if you have any questions, please, reach out to both Gretchen and myself. We're really committed. I think Gretchen and I are really passionate about a couple different things. One is always being positive and keeping calm, because if you're positive, your mindset dictates the actions you take. And there's just all kinds of evidence that being positive opens up your ability to see possibilities and engage in ways that you haven't. So we share that in common. We're very passionate. So this is part of our gift out to everyone, is to kind of share some of this perspective. And then also to always be experimenting with new tools, whether it's from the Bullhorn Marketplace, some of the tools that Gretchen is talking about, or from Growth Place perspective, what we are seeing with our clients. And then, of course, always being informed by data, because data ultimately gives you the place of, am I being effective or am I not being effective? And I think now data is even more important than it ever was, because the trends are shifting so quickly that you really have to just rely on the facts to kind of help you figure out what your next step might be. So Gretchen, anything in summary that you would say before we're going to give people back a bit of time? This will be recorded, by the way. You can download it. Again, you can reach out to us if you have any questions about tools that we've shared here on this call. But anything in closing that you would say?
No, I think I would just summarize it all by saying, what we just talked through is lean into the situation that we're working in. There are a lot of good things about it. So how can you, personally, how can your organization, how can your teams take advantage of that? And I hope we've given you some really good tactical things that you can go implement immediately, and some things to think about as you continue to shape your strategy, both short-term and long-term. So greatly appreciate the opportunity. And to Tracy's point, very happy to answer any questions outside of this webinar as well.
All right, well, with that, we're going to give you some time back, 15 minutes in your day here. And I hope that this has been valuable for all of you. And Gretchen and I are always cooking up something, right? Whether it's a networking event or another webinar. So We'll be back, I'm sure, with another Keep Calm in our series. But again, we thank all of you, and be on the lookout for the download coming in your email.
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. Thanks, Gretchen.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.